All right, I will say good morning, Baruch Hashem, wonderful to be back in person with all of you. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Tammuz. Daniel and Batsheva Pava of Hashmonaim, Eretz Yisrael, in commemoration of the Yahrzeit of their father, Reb Shlomo ben Yehuda Aryeh Vegh. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAHs, neshama will have an aliya and the family a neshama. Week of learning sponsors, Yehuda Jennie Goodhart, in commemoration of the Yahrzeit of Jennie's father, Yeshaya Zalman ben Lazar, Zichron Livracha, and the Brem family of Ramat Beit Shemesh. Leilui Nishmas, their mother, Leah Riva Chaya Bas Meir, on the occasion of her 25th Yahrzeit. Steve Goloskov, in memory of Toba Rabinowitz, Toba Bas Yehoshua, Yaacov Zichron Livracha, sister of Shevy Friedman, and in memory of Adina Adina, Batsheva Bas Dov Ber Azriel, sister of Yossi Opendin. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamas will have an aliya, the families a neshama, all of our hostages will Emirat Hashem be returned to their families b'shalom and b'karov, and our soldiers will be successful b'chol ma'asei yedehem. We will say with that, we have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem, some really incredible Gemara, really beautiful and incredible Gemara ahead of us. Today's daf is Yud Zayin. We are picking up on Tes Zayin Amud Beis. I believe we left off 2, 4, 6, 7 lines into the wide lines. Rabbi Shimon Ber Rebbe, I think I may have begun this a little bit yesterday. Rabbi Shimon Ber Rebbe, Isyal Dilei Barta. This is great, really incredible Gemara. Rabbi Shimon Ber Rebbe had a daughter. Havaka Cholish Daite. He was distressed. Why was he distressed? He wanted a son. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So Rivya Ba'ali Olam. Why would you be upset? Literally again, Rivya, like period of Rivya. Baruch Hashem, propagation has come to the world. What does that mean? That Baruch Hashem, when one is zocha to have a daughter, not only have they brought life into this world, but they brought that which is capable of producing future life into this world. So it's like a double simcha. You've brought life and something capable of bringing life. Normally, Bar Karfa said, Tanchumin shall hevel nicham chavucha. So Bar Karfa comes along and he says to Rabbi Shimon, by the way, your father, he's giving you empty consolation. It's not really a consolation. Why not? This both says incredible Gemara. It is impossible for the world to exist without men and women. Ashrei mi shebanav zecharim, aylo lemi shebanav zikin kevos. It's true, the world needs boys and girls, but praiseworthy is the person who has boys, and woe to the person who has girls. Now, we're going to explain this. Right? Similarly, again, it is impossible for the world to exist without perfumers and without tanners. You need both. Ashrei mishum nasa bosmi, aylo mishum nasa borsi. Right? Praiseworthy is the person who becomes a perfumer. Woe to the person who becomes a tanner. So what does this mean? How could it be that Chazal is saying, woe to the person who has daughters? It doesn't, first of all, the world, like we just said, the world can't exist, obviously, without both men and women, boys and girls. So what's the pshat? So I will say, any father of daughters knows exactly what this Gemara means. Meaning what? It is a schos, Baruch Hashem, to have sons and daughters. The worry that a father has over daughters, right? The preoccupation that a father has with the safety of his daughters. Right? With sons, you worry about sons. Right? Deep down, kind of, what do you know about sons? They're going to figure it out. Whatever, they're going to figure it out, and they're not going to listen to me anyway, right? So in other words, they're going to do their own thing, and the truth is, they're going to be fine. And I have absolute confidence that my daughters are going to be fine as well. In fact, deep down, I maybe even have confidence that my daughters will figure life out well before my sons. But there's a worry. There's a worry about vulnerability. There's a worry about being mistreated by the world. There's a worry that a father has about his. I cannot fall asleep until my daughters are home. My sons, okay, I knew they were going to come home. Of course they're going to get home. But there is just an inherent worry that exists. And I think that's what the Gemara is saying over here. The thing the Gemara is saying is, the Gemara is saying that So what does it mean? Oilo. Just understand that with daughters, the great gift of daughters also comes an enhanced level of worry and an enhanced level of preoccupation. That's what Chazal is saying over here. The Gemara goes right, and the Gemara gives an example of this. The Gemara says, Kitanai. The truth is machlokes tanaim. Machlokes tanaim. What is this? Hashem blessed Avram Avinu with everything. My bakol, what does it mean with everything? Rabbi Meir Omer Shelo Haiselo Bas. Rabbi Meir says, what does it mean that Hashem blessed Avram with everything? What does everything mean? He didn't have a daughter. That was the greatest blessing, that he didn't have a daughter. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shahaiselo Bas. No. Bakol means that Avram Avinu had a daughter. Now, interestingly enough, according to this approach, Avram Avinu had a daughter, yet the Torah doesn't speak about her, which is interesting. So others say Avram Avinu had a daughter. He did have a daughter. And what was her name? Her name was Bakol. That was the name. Vashem Beiraches Avraham Bakol. Right? Bakol is actually the name of his daughter. So as I just mentioned over here, Shnefal Hirsch brings any questions on the Gemara, on the Pasuk, in Chayisar, Vashem Beiraches Avraham Bakol. He asks, how could it be that the Gemara says that what does it mean that Hashem blessed Avram Avinu with everything? Everything means he didn't have a daughter. What is that? It's such a strange way to understand the pasuk. And Rav Hirsch says something very similar to what we just said before, which was Avram Avinu understood if he had a daughter, or say if he had a daughter, who is he marrying his daughter off to? Right? Think about this. Think about this. You think there's a shidduch crisis now, right? Avram Avinu, right? There's a very small pool. There's actually no pool of eligible monotheistic men, right? There's no one. So had Avram Avinu had a daughter, he would have had to marry her off to whoever. So Rav Hirsch says the bracha that Hashem gave to Avram Avinu was what? That he didn't have a daughter. Because this way, again, he didn't have to worry about who he was going to have to marry her off to. And someone clearly that would not be in line with his own theological values. So Avram Avinu he knew astrology. And again, he was well versed in reading the stars, and therefore, again, all of the monarchs of the East and the West came to consult him about astrological matters. Reb Shlomo Omer, Evan Toba Avram Avinu. There was a stone, a beautiful stone that Avram Avinu wore around his neck. Any sick person who gazed upon this stone was immediately healed. When Avram Avinu was left this world, when he died, Kodesh Baruch Hu took this stone and affixed it as part of the sun. I was supposed to say a lot to say about all of these gemaras, but we'll go back to Aryeh. In sheet is what people say. Idli Yoma, Idli Kitsira. Ultimately, again, when the day is gone, so the sickness is lifted as well. Davar Acher, Shalom Marat. So we'll say these are all different interpretations in terms of what it means. Ultimately, Vashem Beirach es Avraham Bakol. What does that statement mean? Davar Acher, another possibility is Shalom Marat Esav Biyamav. Esav never rebelled. Now, also what that means is Esav did not cast off the yoke of monotheism while Avram Avinu was alive. He didn't rebel against Hashem while Avram was alive. Davar Acher, other possibility, Sha'asa Yishmael Tshuva Biyamav. The other possibility doesn't mean that Hashem blessed Avram Avinu with everything, that Avram was zocha to see his son Yishmael do tshuva. So the Gemara questions these last two pieces, Shlomar and Esav Yom Aminal, and how do we know that Esav did not rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu while Avram Avinu was alive? Chsiv, Vayavo Esav min Asada v'hu ayef. Esav came back from the field and he was tired. Vitana, and I will say now, what was that day? Vitana osayom niftar Avram Avinu va'asa Yaacov Avinu tavshil shel adashim v'nachin es Yitzchak Aviv. So this is incredible. What was unique about that day? That was the day that Esav came back from the field. That was the day that Avraham died. Yitzchak was sitting Shiva, and Yaakov was cooking a bowl of lentils for the mourner's meal for his father. The Gemara says, why adashim? Aryeh ma'arava, why lentils? Aryeh ma'arava, mishmei derabba bar mari ma'adash azu, ein la peh, ma'adash azu ein la peh, af aval ein la peh. Why was it customary to serve lentils to a mourner? Just as the lentil is round, right? It doesn't have an opening. So too the mourner doesn't have a mouth, right? The mourner often is left without the proper words to say. The other possibility is, it's just like lentils are round. Af avelus midgalgelus machzeres abay olim. So Shabbos say the concept of loss, the concept of mourning of avelus is circular. What does it mean? It visits everyone. Shabbos say at some point in time, everyone is going to be in mourning for someone. So hence the symbolism of serving lentils to a mourner, either because it doesn't have an opening, it doesn't have a mouth, just like the mourner often lacks the proper words. And again, and the life cycle, mourning, loss is a dynamic that is visited upon everyone. My benayo. So we'll say, what's happening between these two approaches? Can you use eggs? Can you use eggs for the mourner's meal? So on one hand, an egg is not circular. So because it's not circular, maybe it doesn't represent the circle of life and the fact that mourning is a dynamic that will be visited upon everyone. On the other hand, it doesn't have an opening. So maybe again, just like the mourner doesn't have a mouth, it also doesn't have a mouth. So depending on which symbolism you subscribe to will depend whether or not you could use eggs for the mourner's meal. In any event, so the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say, so therefore again, what happened is on that day when Avram Avinu died, Esav comes from the field. Yaakov Avinu is cooking the mourner's meal for his father. Now the Torah says he comes back from the field, v'hu ayef, and he was tired. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, chamesh averos avar osara sheba osayom. Do you want to know why Esav was tired? Do you want to know why he was tired? It was a long day. He really packed it in. There were 5 major averos that he violated on that day. Number 1, the Gemara says, ba al nara mu'rasa. He had relations with a betrothed woman. Number 2, harages hanefesh. He killed someone. Kafar be'eker. He repudiated his belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kafar b'tchias hamesim. He repudiated his belief in resurrection. Vishat es habechora. And ultimately, again, he also repudiated or downplayed or really belittled the bechora, the birthright. Ba nara murasa. So I'll say the Gemara finds a scriptural allusion to each of these things. How do they had relations with nara murasa? Ksiv hacha vayavo esav min hasadeh uksiv hasam ki basadeh matzah. Torah uses the same lashon of sadeh when it comes to a nara murasa, betrothed girl who's violated. V'harages hanefesh ksiv hacha ayef uksiv hasam oy nali ki ayefa nafshi lahargim. All right, kafar be'ikr ksiv hacha lama zeli. By the Bechor, he says, why do I need this? V'ksiv hasam ze keli v'anveu. Kafar b'tchias hamesim. He negated, or he repudiated his belief in tchias hamesim. D'chsiv hine anochi holich lamos. B'shat ha-sabachor d'chsiv vayives Esav es-sabachora. Okay, so we'll say, so the idea over here is Esav, the scriptural allusions, Esav did these 5 bears. So we'll say again, just to tie this back. What does it mean, Bashem Beirachas Abraham Bakol? What does that mean? What does that mean? So again, the Gemara suggests over here that Esav did not leave the fold until after Avram Avinu died. This was a chesed that Hashem did with Avram, that Avram should not see his grandson leave the fold. I just want to point out also, you say to yourself, wow, that's a lot of Averos for one day. Right? It's like an Avera decathlon. You know, it's like a lot of stuff happening over there one day. So I said there's a very simple pshat for how this happens. This is Avera Goreres Avera. This is Avera Goreres Avera. It's not the pshat that Esav set out at the beginning of the day to say, let me see how much sinful activity I can pack in one day. But again, you know what happens when you violate the Na'ara Murasa? None of us should ever know. Have relations with essentially adultery. That opens the door. To a whole bunch of debased activity. So it's not the pshat that Esav set out about this in a premeditated way. But once there's an Ara Murasa, ultimately again, there's murder. And once there's murder, there's kfira. Right? There's no non-belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Once there's kfira, no tchias hamesim, so on and so forth. Avera, goreres Avera. One Avera ultimately opens the door, paves the way for the next. Next, V'shasi Yishmael tshuva b'yamav. The other possibility is that Yishmael did tshuva while Avram Avinu was still alive. Where do we know that from? Gemara says it's actually very beautiful. Kiha to Rabina Rechama Barbuzi Haviyasi Kamei Derava B'Kamnamnim Rav. So this is great Gemara. Rabina Rechama Barbuzi were sitting in front of Rava, and Rava was dozing. He was like dozing on and off. So the Gemara says, Amali Rabina Rechama Barbuzi Vaday Da'amisu. Is it true what we say? Komisa sheyish ba gevia zohi misasan shel tzadikim. So we'll say whenever you see a lashon of vayigva in the Torah, vayigva means, the way it's translated in English is to expire. That whenever you see that lashon of gevia, excuse me, That is a lashon of the death of a tzaddik. So the Gemara said, Amalei, really? He responded back, is that true? V'hagdar hamabo. But the Torah uses lashon of vayigva by the generation of the flood. They clearly were not tzaddikim. Amalei, anan gavia va'asifa kamrinan. No. It was when you ever seen the Torah lashon of vayigva, vayeasef. A person expired and they were collected onto their people, collected onto HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's an expression of the death of the righteous. But it says Gavia and Asifa by Yishmael. And the Gemara presupposes Yishmael was not a tzaddik. It arbuhu Rava. While all of this was happening, Rava woke up, right? Because Rava was dozing. He heard the conversation. He said to him, children, Rabbi Yochanan, Yishmael asa shul b'chayi aviv. No. The Torah does say vayigva vayasef by Yishmael to show us that what? Yishmael did tshuva. Shenemar vayikbaru also Yitzchak v'Yishmael banav. The pasuk says that ultimately again they buried him, Yitzchak and Yishmael his sons. Now what's interesting about this? What's interesting, first of all, that Yishmael came to his father's levaya. That's number one. Number two, what's more intriguing, or what's as intriguing, is the order. The pasuk says, who buried him? Yitzchak and Yishmael. Now remember, Yishmael was the Bechar. Yishmael was older. The fact that Yishmael, excuse me, the fact that Yishmael let Yitzchak go before him represented, the Gemara says, that Yishmael did tshuva. The Gemara says, V'dilma, maybe the Torah is just reckoning them ultimately in order of their wisdom, that Yitzchak was wiser than Yishmael. That's why he's mentioned first. To which the Gemara says, also Isav Yaacov banav, my time alochashalu derechach masan. The Gemara says, when it comes to the death of Yitzchak, it says that his sons Esav and Yaakov buried him. So why wouldn't it put Yaakov first if you're going in order of wisdom? So the Gemara says, Ela mida'aktime. Sorry. She will say rather, but since it puts Yitzchak before Yishmael, therefore what? Adbure adbare umida'adbare shmaminat shuva avar biyamav. Rather, what you see from here that it must have been that Yishmael urged Yitzchak to go first. He urged Yitzchak to take the lead, and the fact that Yishmael urged Yitzchak indicates to us what? That Yishmael did tshuva. So what's interesting about this is, remember, here's what's fascinating, is that the Gemara is proving that Yishmael did tshuva during the lifetime of Avraham Avinu from the fact that Yishmael was deferential to Yitzchak in the burial of Avraham Avinu. But yet the Gemara presupposes that tshuva of Yishmael didn't occur that day. It must have occurred some time before. So when it says Vashem Beiraches Avraham Bakol, what does Bakol mean? That Avraham Avinu saw that his son did tshuva. So I'll say this is such a profoundly moving Gemara. Understand, another recording we've heard a lot today. So when the pasuk says when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, that he's going to have a son with Sarah. So Avraham Avinu says something interesting, right? You would have thought that he would have been doing biblical backflips over this. After all, he was just told he's going to have a son with Sarah. And what does Avraham Avinu say? He says, Lu Yishmael Yichya Lefanecha. Just like Yishmael. Like Halavai Yishmael should have before you. So Hirsch says, what's going on over here? I don't understand. Hashem just told you you're going to have a son with your wife, and you say Lu Yishmael. So Hirsch says, he said, Avraham Avinu was so heartbroken. He said, how unworthy must my son Yishmael be? In fact, you have to bend the laws of nature and bring give a child to a 90-year-old woman. Avraham Avinu was heartbroken about what that said about his child, about Yishmael. For Avraham Avinu, whose mission it was to change his world, can you imagine what an abysmal failure he felt when his own son was so profoundly unworthy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to bend the laws of nature to give a child to an old woman. So the idea, and again, that's why he said, again, not a thank you, not a shkoyach, Lu Yishmael, what's wrong with Yishmael? What's wrong with Yishmael? So ultimately, again, the idea was it's you feel like so happy for Avraham Avinu. What a bracha it was for Avraham Avinu to leave this world knowing that Yishmael was about tshuva. Vashem beiraches Avraham bakol. Avraham Avinu went to the Olam HaEmes. He went to the world to come knowing that his son Yishmael became about tshuva. Incredible. Tanah Banan. Shloshet Yimei HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Olam Hazeh. Top of Yitzhak, Me'ein Olam Haba. So we'll say there were three people. There were three people who HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed them to taste of the world to come while still living in this world. 17a top line. Elohein. And we'll say these are the three people. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. We'll say this is really an incredible Gemara. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov got to taste some of the beauty of the world to come in this world. In this world. Who was Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? So Avram Dichsiv, Bakol. Hashem Mirakas Avraham Bakol, with everything. So the Gemara understands over here that Bakol means that literally everything, you even tasted the world to come. Yitzchak Dichsiv, Dichsiv Be, Mikol. By Yitzchak Avinu it says, Mikol. From everything. Yaakov Dichsiv, Kol. So we'll say this is the Bakol, Mikol, Kol that we say in benching, right? Bakol, Mikol, Kol. This is the Avos, and the Avos had the opportunity to taste Olam Haba in Olam Haza. Look at Rashi, tap Rashi. So actually Rashi, we don't have to do it. So let's say, really incredible Gemara. So first of all, what does this mean? Is this talking about like on a Gashmi level? That Baruch Hashem, they all had, Avram Avinu, Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov, essentially, I will say, had the bracha of what we call of being Okal al Shtei Shulchanos. They had material wealth, and they also had spiritual wealth. So that type of maybe like equilibrium of having everything, maybe that's Olam Haba, or maybe that's a little bit of Olam Haba and Olam Haza. The other possibility is just on a spiritual level. That whereas normally, again, I will say, what is Olam Haba? Olam Haba is complete closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, complete devekos. So maybe what it's saying over here is that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were able to experience some of that devekos, some of that connection here in this world as well. Incredible. Well, so let's go weiter. Let's go, first of all, before I go on, a special mazel tov to Mr. Ringo. Mr. Ringo, Baruch Hashem, yesterday had his first great grandchild, right? A little girl born to his children, his granddaughter and grandson-in-law. So mazel tov, also mazel tov to our extended shir, the Rams in Toronto. Baruch Hashem will also. Halavai, Mr. Ringo, Mrs. Ringo, to see Dori Doros of Yiddish Nachos and Lemir Hashem Bizocha. This little girl should grow up to be a Bas Yisrael, someone who is Mekadeshim Shamaim each and every day and has tremendous simcha, bracha, and mazla meva esim shanim tovos. Okay, so it's only because we have to end off the Bakol Gemara with the birth of a girl, right? In other words, that's the way it works. So the Gemara goes weiter. So beautiful Gemara will say, Shlosha lo shalat b'hain Yitzhahara. There are three people. This is a wild Gemara. Three people who never. So we'll say. So we're going to translate it now as Shalosh shalat b'hain Yitzhahara. They really never had the Yitzhahara. Right? The Yitzhar didn't rule over them. Elohein, who are the three people? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Incredible. So we'll see what this means in just a moment. As the Gemara says, Dichsiv bohu bakol mikol kol. Same idea. Each of these, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, have this lashon of kol. Kol means almost like the totality. So the Gemara understands over here, according to this approach, totality means the Yitzhahara did not have dominion over them. The Gemara says, Av yish omrim af David. Some say also David HaMelech. The Yitzhar didn't have hold over him. D'chsiv v'libi chalal b'kirbi. Literally, again, my heart is chalal means like empty inside of me. V'idach. So the Gemara says, I see the idea over here. So the first opinion says libi chalal b'kirbi means David HaMelech says I had complete control over myself. V'idach. The other opinion says no. Tsari hu dekamidkar. Libi chalal b'kirbi doesn't mean that the Yitzhahara died inside of me. Rather, what it means is it's speaking about the pain that he encountered in life. Now, I will say, this is a fascinating Gemara. So, first of all, the notion that there are people, the lo shalat pa Yitzhahara. The Yitzhahara didn't have control over them. Now, I will say that for honest, it's very strange that the Gemara would include David HaMelech in this list, because David HaMelech had the entire episode with Batsheva. So, what are you talking about? The Yitzhahara didn't have a hold over David HaMelech. So what Chazal telling us is like this. The lashon over here is very interesting. It doesn't say Shlosha Shelo Hayu Bahen Yitzhahara. Rather, it says Shlosha Lo Shalat. Shalat means what? Shlita means what? To rule over something. There are three people who the Yitzhahara did, or maybe four, who the Yitzhahara did not rule over. What does it mean, rule? To rule over something means you have complete control. What the Gemara is saying over here is there are certain people. Of course they have Yitzhahara. I don't know if he didn't have the Yitzhahara. Of course he did. I don't know, they might put me in Chayrim for saying stuff like that, right? Of course I'm not a Yitzhahara. Of course Yitzchak had a Yitzhahara. Of course Yaakov had a Yitzhahara. And of course David had a Yitzhahara. So of course they're human beings. Every single human being has Yetzer Hara. So what does it mean, Shlosh Shalat? Sibbo said there's a difference. A lot of us fall into the clutches of the Yetzer Hara, and what happens? The Yetzer Hara becomes my king. He's my king. I pledge my allegiance to him, meaning what? I give in to a pleasure-seeking, hedonistic type of lifestyle. That's it. I give in. Life is about my pleasure. Life is about my enjoyment. That's it. That's the Yetzer Hara life. That's the life where the Yetzer Hara rules. Because what am I going to do? What's going to shape my decision-making process? Whatever is going to make me happy and whatever is going to give me pleasure, that's what I'm going to do. There are certain great people, I will say, who although they have a Yetzer Hara, they never let the Yetzer Hara take control over them. Are there moments when they fall into the clutches of the Yetzer Hara? Absolutely. But what happens in that moment when they fail and when they fall into the clutches? What do? They fight back. And they retake the reins of control. They might episodically, periodically, momentarily fall into the clutches of the Yetzer Hara, but they never remain there. Whenever they slip, whenever they fall, they fight back and take back the reins. That's the pshat. And that's why you could include David HaMelech in this list. Did David HaMelech fall into the clutches of the Yetzer Hara? He did. And what did he do right after he was confronted with the realities of his actions? What did he do? Tshuva. Chatasi Hashem. Tshuva. And he turned his life around and he took back the reins. I will say, that is godless. To think that there are people who don't have a Yetzer Hara, there are people, or there are entities that don't have a Yetzer Hara. You know what we call them? Malachim. Malachim don't have a Yetzer Hara, or dead people. Malachim and dead people. Right? Malachim and dead people and God. Right? So dead people and Malachim do not have a Yetzer Hara. Right? Everything else that is living and breathing, at least people, have a Yetzer Hara. So what's the hallmark of greatness? Shalosh Shalat. Do you rule your Yetzer Hara, or does your Yetzer Hara rule you? Now, boss, say, understand. Even if you rule your Yetzer Hara, doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes. No, we all make mistakes. But when you control Yetzer Hara, the moment you make mistakes, in that moment, the Yetzer Hara took the reins. Then what happens? When I wake up, right? Then I realize, no. I beat down the Yetzer Hara and I take the reins back. That's David HaMelech. That's Avram. That's Yitzchak. That's Yaacov. Finding the strength when you recognize that you've fallen or you failed to take back the reins of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara will not have shlita, will not have control over me. Incredible. Tana Baran. Shisha. There are 6 people who the Malach HaMavis had no control over. These are the 6. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Dichsiv, Bahu, Bakol, Mikol, Kol. So also you keep coming back to the Kol. Right? Avram, Yitzchak, had everything. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So we'll say this is very interesting. So Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So by Moshe and Aaron it says, Al Pi Hashem. They died literally again through the mouth of Hashem. We call this a misa of neshika, a death through a kiss. Meaning the Malach HaMaves could not take the life of Aaron and Moshe. It was only HaKadosh Baruch Hu who took the life. Miriam lo ksiv ba'al pi Hashem. But by Miriam it doesn't say that she died al pi Hashem. Lazar, Miriam nami bin neshika mesa. So ultimately again, Miriam also died through a kiss of Hashem. How do we know that? The Asya sham mimoshe. So also make a gzera shava. The pasuk says, "Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbar tzim b'chodesh harishon vayashev ha'am b'kodesh v'tamas sham Miriam." It says sham by the death of Miriam and sham by the death of Moshe. The Gemara says, just like Moshe died b'neshika with a kiss from Hashem, so too Miriam died with a kiss from Hashem. So why doesn't it say by Miriam that she died by a kiss from Hashem? Sheginai hadavar lomar. We'll say the Torah feels almost like Miriam's a woman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu often is identified in the masculine, right? So therefore, it would have seemed strange to say that Miriam died with a kiss from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, again, she did die with a kiss from HaKadosh. She did die a death of neshika, but at the end of the day, ultimately, again, it's a nuanced reference. I will say, I just want to tell you something amazing. This week's parsha. That pasuk is this week's parsha. Right? That's Parshas Chukas. Erev Shabbos Chukas. You know, we always speak about the kisses from Hashem that we receive. Right? Every so often, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a little kiss on the head, right? And says, Shefela, I love you. Thank you for waking up so early at these ungodly hours and learning my Torah, right? And giving up so much of much needed and precious sleep to come and to learn my Torah. And every once in a while, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're doing great things. So when it happens that Bava Basra, in the 7.5-year cycle, on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, quotes the death of Miriam on Erev Shabbos Parshas Chukas, the parsha that has the death of Miriam, that's the Neshika. By the way, what's the topic? The topic is Neshika is a kiss of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'll say, just understand, I hope you feel it, right? If you close your eyes, don't close your eyes at this hour of the morning, you will be asleep, right? But for my side, if you just open your heart and open your neshama, you'll feel the kiss. You'll feel the embrace of the Ribbon Shalom when you get this little sign from above that we are on the right track of spiritual development. Incredible Gemara. TORAH. We'll say there are 7 people whose bodies never decomposed. Even after they died, their bodies didn't decompose. Ve'eluhin, these are the 7 people. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaacov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, Binyamin ben Yaakov. Binyamin, the son of Yaakov. So we'll say, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Dichsib, Hu, Bakol, Mikol, Kol. So we'll say, so by the way, they also tell me, you're going to have a new appreciation of benching, right? We see Bakol, Mikol, Kol means all of this stuff, all of these things, all of these brachos that the Avos had, Bakol Mikol Kol, okay. Moshe v'Aaron Miriam d'chsev al pi Hashem, since they died al pi Hashem, ultimately, therefore their bodies did not decompose. Binyamin ben Yaakov d'chsev u'lebinyamin amar yedid Hashem yishkon levetach alav. So Binyamin, it is said he is the beloved one of Hashem. Yishkon levetach, he will dwell with security forever. So the Gemara understands over here, dwell with security means that even his body did not decompose. We'll say, what does it matter if your body decomposes, body doesn't decompose, like it's irrelevant? So I'll say the idea over here, the idea that the body decomposes after a person dies is because the body often had an adversarial relationship with the soul. That's the way it works for most of us, right? And therefore, again, the body is a necessary vehicle during the 120 years that we have in this world. But once a person leaves this world, the soul continues on and exists for eternity, but the body decomposes. The body no longer serves a purpose. And in fact, again, the body decomposes really represents its adversarial relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A tzaddik, what makes a tzaddik? There's a certain level of equilibrium between body and soul. It's not an adversarial relationship. This goes back to the previous Gemara, right? The tzaddik is able to rein in the Yetzer Hara, not defeat it, not vanquish it, but control the Yetzer Hara. Because of that, the body is not undermining the avodah of the soul, but rather, again, the body becomes the partner of the soul. When the body becomes the partner of the soul, then the body is vested with holiness as well. That holiness manifests itself in the fact that the body does not decompose, because the body then becomes a vehicle of Kiddusha as well. Just as the soul becomes eternal, so too figuratively or metaphorically, the body becomes eternal as well, resting in the grave fully intact. That's why you have this concept that the bodies of tzaddikim do not decompose because the bodies themselves become a chefza of Kiddusha. So you will say, this is the power. If I'm able to rein in the Yetzer Hara, if I'm able to keep the reins over the Yetzer Hara, if I'm able to go ahead and not have the body as an adversary in life, but somehow bring the body underneath the shlita, underneath the reign and autonomy of the soul, it vests the body with a heightened level of Kiddusha, to the point that even the body won't decompose in the grave. Incredible. Let's go weiter. V'yesh omer af David. Others say David HaMelech as well. D'chsev af b'sari yishkon levetach. David HaMelech says, even my flesh will be eternally secure. V'idach hahu rachamei d'kaboy. Others say, no, that's not David HaMelech talking about his body, but rather, again, that's David HaMelech ultimately asking for divine mercy. Okay, so we'll say this is incredible. There are 4 people who the only reason they died was because, literally, again, of the counsel or the advice of the snake. We'll say, what does this mean? As a result of the sin of Adam and Chava, death was decreed upon man. Now, there's a whole discussion about this. The Ramban brings down, death was always part of the equation. You have to have death. Without death, right, immortality would be the worst thing in the world. The idea that Ramban brings down is a natural death or premature death. But the idea over here is, look at Rashi, So I'll say the idea over here is there are four people who only died because death was decreed upon humanity. Without that decree, they would have never died. In other words, they were so righteous that they would have never died. So the Gemara says, who are they? The Elohein, Binyamin ben Yaakov. Well, so this is an interesting list. Binyamin ben Yaakov, Binyamin the son of Yaakov, Amram Avi Moshe, Amram the father of Moshe, Yishai Avi David, Yishai the father of David, Vikilav ben David, Vikilav the son of David. So the Gemara says, Vikulu Gimar. And I will say, how do we know this? All of these people, this is a tradition. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, isn't this incredible? Isn't this incredible? Who's not included in this list? Who's not included in this list? The Bakol Mikol Kol Chevra, right? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are not on this list. Moshe, again, I will say, it's this week's parasha also. May Mariva Moshe. So it's interesting, I will say, that the greatest of the great committed Averos. The greatest of the great committed Averos. So this is the whole Chav. The greatest of the great committed Averos then owned their misdeeds and ultimately turned themselves around. But for myself, still committed Averos. There are certain people apparently who never committed Averos. I'll say, I just want to point out something amazing. Isn't it fascinating that the list of the people who never committed Averos are not the list of the greatest people throughout time? Isn't that fascinating? I'll say, to be honest, we don't know most of this list, right? Okay, so Binyamin. We'll say, how much do you know about Binyamin, the son of Yaakov? How much do you know about him? How much do you know about Binyamin Yaakov? I know Rashi says he named all of his kids in honor of his brother Yosef, right? I know that he was taken captive by Yosef. That's about it. I will say, what do you know about Amram? What about Amram? Ultimately, again, the father of Moshe Rabbeinu. We know about it from the Gemara. Remember, said Sota, that he divorced his wife, he took his wife, right? What does the Torah tell us? The Torah tells us his name, Amram. Right? Who else in here? Right? Yishai, the father of David. Again, Yishai, let's say, you know why Yishai saying this? You know why Yishai saying this? Because he had a son, David, right? In other words, how much do you know about him? Again, I know he was righteous. No, what do I know about him? Kilav ben David? I'll say, to be honest, you're like, never heard of him before in my life. Right? Wow, I'm so happy I learned Gemara so I can see what happens in Navi. Right? So David had a son named Kilav. Who knew? Right? Who thunk? Right? In other words, who knew it? Who knew that? So I say, isn't this incredible? Isn't this incredible? That sometimes, and this is going to sound a little bit strange, sometimes what makes great people great is the fact that they sinned. I will say, the fact that we mess up in life, that's what opens the door to greatness. Because those feelings of defeat, we spoke about this a little bit last night in Chassidus, the feelings of defeat that you feel in the aftermath of sin, the feeling of profound sadness and failure that you feel in the aftermath of sin, sometimes it is those very feelings that open the door to the actualization of personal greatness. And without that, you're great, but you don't become the greatest. There is a reason why every single one of our greatest people throughout history has made mistakes. And there are Averos, at least if they did it in Chumash and Navi, are on record. That's what opens the door for greatness. We often look at sin as failure. Sin represents momentary or episodic failure, but then it opens the door to the greatest of the great. In the aftermath of sin, what you could accomplish and what you could do and who you can be, there is no limit. So it's interesting. Yeah, there are four people. There are four people who never sinned, and they only died because of the Nachash. That's great, I will say. But to be honest, these four people, these are not the ones who accomplished great things on behalf of Klal Yisrael, and not the ones who we look to as our leaders. It's really incredible. So the Gemara says, all of this is a tradition of Rabbi Yishai Avi David, the Mefarish Mekra. So Yishai, the Pasuk says, D'chsiv, Ves Amasa, Samav Shalom Tachas Yoav Al Tzava, Va'amasa ben Ish Ushmo Yisra, Yisraeli, Asher Ba Avigail Bas Nachash. She had a child with Avigail, the daughter of Nachash. Achos Tzruya, the sister of Tzruya. Aim Yoav, the mother of Yoav. The Chi Bas Nachash was Avigail, the daughter of Nachash? No. Valo bas Yishai. Avigail was the daughter of Yishai. D'chsiv v'achiyosem tzura v'Avigail ela bas Misha meis be'et yav shal Nachash. So why does it call her Avigail, the daughter of Nachash? Why does it call Yishai Nachash? Because he was a man who only died because of the sin of the Nachash, because of the sin of the snake, sin of Adam HaRishon. So representing this idea that Yishai only died because of the sin of Adam HaRishon. Incredible, I will say. Incredible. All right. Hadron Allah, Hashotza, I will say. Mazel Tov. Wow, what a run. Lo yachvar Adam bar, Samach Baro. Supposed to say, Basra, I'm finishing the parak. Oh, the first parak of Basra, Mazel Tov was great. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Good. Second paragraph is going to be even better. Lo yachbar adam bar samach labaro shachavero. It will say back to partners in the field, right? So I share us an adjacent chaser with Ruvain. I am not allowed to dig a pit close to the pit of Ruvain. Okay, again, we'll define the scope of this in just a little bit. V'lo siach, v'lo ma'ara, v'lo amas Shamaim, v'lo nivrechas kofsin. So we'll say, so again, these are all different types of pits. Rashi points out over here, a bar was generally circular, a siach was long, like rectangular, ma'ara was underground and had a roof, nivrechas akofsim means like a launderer's pool. All of these things, unless of course you distance yourself from the wall of your friend, 3 tfachim. 3 tfachim, okay? Visad bisid. Furthermore, again, you have to line the walls of your pit, ultimately, again, with plaster, with lime, in order to solidify the walls. Similarly, again, I will say, if I have in my field, gefes is olive pulp, right? Zevel is manure, melach is salt, sid is lime, slaim are stones that are used to start fires. You could keep any of this stuff in your field, but you must distance it at least 3 tfachim from the wall of your friend. I will say, this is a little bit different. These items generate heat. Now, I will say, now the idea, obviously, of distancing, when if I'm digging a pit in my chutzner, I have to go ahead and distance that pit from the wall of my friend, obviously, because anytime you're digging, you run the risk of loosening the soil and eroding the foundation of the wall. So the Pashas, that's why I have to distance. That's case 1. Case 2, all of these items generate, in second case, all these items generate heat. Heat could also erode the wall, therefore you need a distance of 3 tefachim. Next, you also will say if you're planting seeds, or you're plowing, or you have urine, you have to distance all of this 3 tefachim from your friend's wall. Now I will say all of this is for different reasons, right? So Zraim, we'll see, could have a detrimental effect on the wall. Macharisha, plowing, also loosens the earth, could have a negative effect on the wall. Urine apparently goes in and erodes at the bricks of the wall. So all of these things must also be distanced 3 tefachim from my friend's wall. So the one goes weiter, if I have a mill in my chatzar, so we'll say in general, a mill, there are 2 millstones. There was an upper stone and a lower stone. The lower stone was wider than the upper stone. You have to distance the mill from your friend's wall 3 tefachim. But it's 3 tefachim from the lower stone, which essentially is 4 tefachim from the upper stone. The satan, or similarly again, if I have an oven in my field, I have to distance that from my friend's wall. Shlosham in akalya, shin arba min asafa. So we'll say, so also an oven was wider at the bottom and narrower at the top. It had to be distanced 3 tefachim from the bottom, which essentially was 4 tefachim from the top. Incredible. I will say Amud Beis. So ask the Gemara, I pasach the bar mesayim b'kosel. So I will say, here's the problem. The Mishnah doesn't read well. How does the Mishnah start? The Mishnah says, I should not dig a pit in my field that is samuch, that is close to the pit of my friend in his field. Right? And then it says, unless, of course, you distance it 3 tefachim from your friend's wall. So what are we talking about over here? Right? It starts by telling me, pasach the bar, starts by telling me that I can't dig close to my friend's pit, and then it ends off by saying you have to distance it 3 tefachim from your friend's wall. So which one is it? So the Gemara says, "Listen, ela imkin yerchem yireh Amar Abaye v'tim Rabbi Yehuda mikosel boro shaninu." Oh, it's one and the same. What it's saying is like this: if I'm digging a pit in my field, I have to distance my pit 3 tefachim from the wall of my friend's pit. From the wall of my friend's pit. And the Gemara says, "V'tim Rabbi Yehuda mikosel boro shaninu." I have a listening. So why don't you go ahead and just say in the Mishnah that I can dig a pit in my field as long as I'm 3 tefachim away from my friend's pit? To which the Gemara says, the kosel bar shlosha tefachim. So we'll say, no, what is the Mishnah teaching me? The Mishnah teaching me, will say, very important halacha, that a pit has a wall. A pit has a wall. What is the wall of the pit? 3 tefachim. So therefore, I will say, what it's saying is like this, is that if I'm going ahead and digging a pit in my chatzar, I have to make sure to distance that at least 3 tefachim from the wall of the pit of my friend. How large is the wall of the Ruvain's wall pit? Pit wall, right? What's the thickness of his pit wall? Ultimately 3 tefachim. So three. Essentially, we'll say the area, the 3 tefachim around. So you have the pit, which is the cavity, right? The bar, which is the cavity. The 3 tefach area around that cavity, that is considered to be the wall of the pit. Therefore, when distancing, right? So if I'm digging a pit in my chutzner, and Reuven has a pit in his chutzner, I have to make sure that I'm at least 3 tefachim away from the wall of his pit. From the wall of his pit. Good. So the Gemara says, now this Gemara says this is very important because this has a ramification for business dealings. So for example, I will say if I go and I sell my bar, I have a bar and I want to sell the bar. So I say to Reuven, I'm selling you my bar and its walls. What's included in the walls of the bar? The 3 tefach area around the cavity of the pit. Incredible. So Aryeh goes al shlosh tefachim. Seit Marbo says it's a very interesting case. Habog l'smoch b'tzad hametzar. Rabbi said, now watch this. Now we come to the thrust of what we're going to see a lot in this beginning sugya. I'm neighbors with Reuven, right? We have a clearly defined property line. Great. I want to dig my pit right on the property line, on my side, but right by the property line. Am I allowed to do that? Abaye Omer Somech. Abaye says yes. Essentially, Abaye's shita is you can do whatever you want in your property. Now, obviously, can you dig the pit right on the property line? Can you dig it right on the property line? No. So what do you have to do? You obviously need 3 tefachim, right? So obviously, again, what it means is I'm building my pit right up to my property line, meaning I'm going to give the 3 tefach wall area. So the wall is going to abut the property line. So can I do that? Abaye says yes. And we're going to say Abaye's logic essentially is, as long as you're in your property, you can do whatever you want. Rava says, no, you can't do it right up at the property line. So let's analyze this. So one says, well, one second, what are we talking about over here? So we'll say, now remember, we're going to see that there are different types of fields. There are some fields which lend themselves to pit digging. And we'll say, now what does that mean? So remember, why is one digging a bar? This is a water cistern. So we'll say, so in fields that needed irrigation, that could not rely on rainwater, you often had to have pits. You had to have irrigation ditches in the fields. So if we're talking about a field where we know that both sides are going to be digging pits, so divrei hakol eino somech. So we'll say, no, everyone agrees you can't do that because that wouldn't be fair. Because then again, if you bring your pit all the way up to the border of the field, I'm putting Reuven at a disadvantage. So obviously, everyone agrees that if we're talking about a field where you normally dig irrigation pits, you can't do it. Keep please. Where's machlokes? What a field where it's not common to dig pits. These are not fields where normally, again, you would assume that there are going to be boros. Abaye says that you could put I'm allowed to put my pit right in my field next to the border. Because there's no reason to assume that Reuven is going to dig a bar. Why not? Because these are not these type of fields, right? This is not the type of field where bars are going to be dug. Rava says, no, you still can't. Why? Because Reuven could say to me, because Rava says, Reuven could say to me, listen, Silber, the same way you decided that you want to go ahead and dig a pit over here, I should have that same right as well. But if you're building right on the border, that compromises me. So I'll say alternate version of this machlokes. So we'll say in this alternate version, everyone agrees that if we're talking about a field in which you would not normally dig pits, everyone agrees that I have the right to build right on the border. Right on the border. Keep please. Where's the machlokes? Right, keep ligi. The machlokes is in a field where it's going to be normal to dig pits. Abaye Omer Somech. Abaye says I'm allowed to put my pit right on the border. Why? Because remember we saw this before. Even according to the opinion that says that in general you have to distance a tree from a bar 25 amos. Remember again we saw this. Why? Why do I have to distance it? Because of the roots. Right? That's hasam hu deba'ina de karnata isalabar. That's because they were talking about a case where at the time that I planted my tree, Reuven already had his bar. So Reuven was there already. Therefore, it's upon me to distance my tree. We'll say, but in this case, I will say, remember, when I'm digging my pit, what does Reuven have in his chatzar? Nothing. So if Reuven has nothing in his chatzar, and I'm operating fully and solely on my property, why can't I build right on the border? The Rava says, on the other hand, Eino Somech. Rava says, no, I'm not allowed to build on the border. Why? And even Rabbi Yossi, who said in general that you can do whatever you want in your property, that's only because when you plant the tree, this is in the tree in the bar case, at the moment you plant the tree, ultimately again, the roots do not yet exist. Even though the roots may at some point go ahead and damage the bar, the roots don't exist yet. This is very interesting. Rava will say something very interesting. In this case over here, every shovelful of dirt that I go ahead and use to dig my pit, I'm doing it right on the border, weakens Ruvain's land. There is a direct negative impact that is happening over here right now. So we'll say, so according to this Ikad Amri, here's how they're framing this machlokes. In a case where we're dealing with a field where it is uncommon to dig pits, everyone will agree that I have the right to dig right on the border. Where's the machlokes? In a case, ultimately, again, in a case where there's a field, where both of us have fields, where it's common to go ahead and dig pits. So ultimately, again, Abaye says that halacha l'maisa, I'm allowed to dig in my own property. Why? Because right now Reuven has nothing going on. So because he has nothing going on, I'm not damaging him. As long as I'm not actively damaging him at the time that I'm digging my pit, no problem. Rava says, no, you can't dig on the border. Why not? Because I am actively damaging him. Because every time I dig right on the border, I will say, it'd be foolish to think that my digging over here is not having a negative impact, loosening the soil on his side. Therefore, again, I can't dig on the border. So we'll say, fundamental machlokes Abaye and Rava. So let's go later. Says the Gemara, let's analyze. Tnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Lo yachbar adam bar samach l'bar shachavero. So we'll say, so what did it say in the Mishnah? The Mishnah said, I'm not allowed to dig a pit in close proximity to my friend's pit. So taima di'ika bar. Now the reason I'm not allowed to do it is why? Because Reuven has a bar already, right? The reason I can't dig my pit in close proximity to Reuven's property is because Reuven's bar already is there. So taima di'ika bar, haleka bar somech. What do you see from here? That if Reuven did not have a bar, as long as I'm operating in my property, I have the right to dig a pit in my property. So the Gemara said, so according to the approach that says that that we're talking about over here in a field that is not made for boros, everyone agrees that you could build on your property right by the border. We can say that our Mishnah is talking about a case of a sada where you don't normally have boros, and therefore halacha l'maisa, if Reuven doesn't yet have something there, I can build right on the border. If Reuven does have something there, then I have to distance myself. But according to the approach that says that even in a field where you don't normally have boros, they're still arguing. So according to Abaye, this makes sense. But what will Rava do with this? So we'll say, no, that's already, again, so Rava will say about this, we already mentioned this answer already, that Abaye said the name of Rabbi Yehuda, that we're talking about distancing from the wall of the pit itself. Rashi says, almost right across, that ultimately, again, the Mishnah said itself, that Allah L'maisa, you have to go ahead and distance the second bar 3 tefachim from the wall of the first bar. So we're going to have to stop over here for today. But again, just understand, we're really ending off in the midst of what is really going to become a raging machlokes, which really gets to the core of what you are or not allowed to do in your own chaser. So again, Abaye is essentially telling me that as long as I'm operating in my own chaser, I can build a bar, dig a bar, even right on the border. Rava says, no, you cannot, you have to distance yourself. Machlokes, what kind of fields are we talking about? Are we talking about fields where boros are normally dug, fields where boros are not normally dug? So we'll say that's all a part of our machlokes. We don't have resolution on it today, but Emir Tzashem, B'shat Tov Matzlachos, resolution will come tomorrow. I will say, what an incredible week of learning together. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos, a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom, have a great day, everyone. Good Shabbos, Shkoyach. What a week.